I didn't know if there would be multiple people on the call or just...
I think Ron and I are going to do this interview as a team, right, Ron?
Yes.
It's Ron. Mr. Ron.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Same here.
All right, well, Steve, welcome to the interview.
Hey.
I guess I'll do intros quick, right? So I'll start. I'm Lisa Reiner, and I am leading our IT enterprise products group. Have a team of 4 individuals. I have 2 open recs right now. Mixture of BAs and product owners primarily. And I've been with JackLinks a little over 4 years.
All right, I'll go. Ram Machini, Application Platforms Manager. Currently manage team that helps with SAP administration, database administration, and application development.
Okay.
Including integration. Been with JackLinks for almost 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
Man, Ron, going on a decade.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so the position, Steve, you are applying for our open, it's an app dev position, right?
Correct.
All right, who wants to start off?
Yeah, so
I can if you want. Up to you, Rob.
No, I was thinking maybe we'll let Steve start off.
Yeah, so I guess hearing a little bit about you guys, a little bit about me is I've been graduated for like 12 years from the University of Minnesota. Basically, since then, I've been working with a lot of mostly contract roles, but not only just contract roles, but also a few longer actual like corporate W-2 type jobs with web firms and different web companies and stuff throughout the last 10 years. So I've worked on a lot of different platforms, bigger like even CMS stuff like WordPress and Joomlas, and then also some application type stuff like front end frameworks, like the Vues and the Reacts and things. So I've been basically doing this for about 12 years now. So I've seen a lot, I've done a lot. Mostly front end is my kind of goal right now. I focus more on front end development. I do know some back end. I do know some database stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I guess the recruiter got out to me about a year ago when the whole global situation happened. I was actually working for a very big e-commerce site, but they did mostly big event supplies and weddings and things like that. And unfortunately, when the whole situation happened, all those big events of people and stuff have shut down. So since then, I've been basically working contract roles. Some of the bigger projects I've worked in the Twin Cities area is I redid Hennepin Technical College. We redid their website about a year or 2 ago for up in Brooklyn Park for the Hennepin Technical College. And then we also worked with Rosedale Mall and the Mall of America on doing their application. And even when you go to the kiosks and like the mall and stuff, you can see how it like directs you and such. So all that is being done through application development. So that kind of puts me to where I am today. And I've just kind of recruiters have been reaching out, and I've been starting to, put my application back out there.
Very good.
Go ahead, Lisa. I'll let you continue.
Okay, so I just have some super, possibly simple questions. I kind of want to, we are just kind of starting to, I guess, launch pad off, right, into this whole world of application development. And so there's an application that I'm kind of inheriting, which is built from a couple of different components. So I just want to ask you really quickly how familiar you are with them. And, if you are, you are. If not, that's cool.
Okay.
All right. So I think you mentioned React, right? You're React Native. Are you familiar?
Yes, I worked on that with Optum over in Eden Prairie on an application.
How about Heroku?
Heroku? No, to be honest, I don't even think I've heard of that one.
All right, that's fine. And then in terms of like cloud storage, Cloudflare, Amazon AWS, you've built on top of these.
Yep, Amazon AWS is very popular.
Both platforms, iOS and Android, yes.
Yes, with cross, frameworks.
And then how comfy are you with Python?
I'm not much of Python or backend or again, I stay really focused on more. I mean, Python can do software and stuff also, but I'm not. I'm not too familiar. Nothing like nothing contracted where I've done Python work.
That's cool. That's fine. All right, those were my first out of the gate questions, Mr. Mushini.
So, any specific favorability towards a specific technology that you have, Steve? When you are looking for a role?
Yeah, so I mean, things have always, changing in this industry when you've been in it 12 years now. Things that are here now weren't even here several years ago. A lot of things when I started were just custom files and, HTML and things like that. Now it's become more of the whole CMS platform. So obviously I'm very familiar with the WordPress. Even I think Jack Links is built on the Magento CMS, if I'm correct. Right. So I have worked with a lot of those technologies. I guess as far as preferred, I don't really have necessarily a preference. I just find that a lot of companies are using the same things. So when it comes to like websites, a lot of, WordPress, but if it is e-commerce, a lot of like either Magento or even in some cases like Shopify and things. But then as far as with application development, I find that a lot of the corporate level stuff is using React. That seems to be kind of the go-to corporate level application framework right now. And then also I personally am having more fun and working with like a Vue.js, which I think like if you had to ask me like what technologies do I think I like, I do like the Vue framework. I do like where that's kind of going. I think that ability to kind of take the best of React and Angular and not be held by a company. It's more of an open source community and such. So I do think as far as that, although I've only worked on one contract position where I've actually used the Vue framework. So I guess as far as technologies I do like WordPress just because I see it as far as website platforms. I do like the Magento for e-commerce, and I do like for applications the Vue, but I find a lot of companies are building with React.
Okay. So when other than favorability, so if I say that if you have to provide some direction to the organization, what's your thought around it? Do you think that you have enough insight to provide a direction for an organization that hasn't established much web development within the organization today?
Like being able to actually build the product from scratch?
No, like provide direction, provide some recommendations. This is what you would want to consider. These are the tools that would help and support the future state too, instead of just taking a look at it from a point in time view.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if over the contract roles in my past, a lot of the technologies have been, decided before I was a part of the project or things had already been started, things like that. But if it is a ground up type project, I have no problem pointing or at least giving my recommendations as far as where I think the best technologies are today in 2021, I guess, and where things are kind of going over the future. And that's why I do see, I mean, as old as some of these things like the CMS platforms are, they seem to work very good. At the end of the day, they all kind of do the same thing, just a different, UI in the back to kind of manage it all. But I don't see those going anywhere. So if it's just a small informational website, I would probably say just put up a small WordPress. If it's an e-commerce, I would probably recommend something like a Magento, especially like a corporate e-commerce. And then if it's an application, I mean, I would say either React or Vue are very popular. And, you can find, the resources out there if you need to find another person. If you do some of these other JavaScript frameworks like Ember, and there's a few that I haven't even touched, but it's very hard to find the resources for people who know those frameworks. So it seems to be like React and Vue are kind of the future right now of cross-platform applications, unless you're going to do Swift and everything for their own iOS or Droid operating system.
Yeah, so your previous gigs and jobs, how would you rank yourself in terms of familiarity with Scrum framework? Is that primarily how you have worked on your development teams running when you get work assigned, I guess?
So yes, I guess it really has depended on the project in the past, but as far as like the Scrum Agile, system of framework to kind of move projects forward and stuff, that's something I'm very familiar with. Again, it hasn't been implemented in every company I've worked with, but it does seem to be a system that it does keep everybody in the know and keep projects moving forward, especially even before this whole global situation happened. I've worked on actually several projects, even with like Optum and stuff, where some teammates would be in New York, some were in California, some were overseas. So it was very already, even before this, we were using Scrum Agile types system to make sure projects were moving forward, and then also Jira and other project management type tools that will ensure everybody's kind of in the know. Now I've also worked on teams where we go into the office every day and sit down and everybody's there to kind of bump heads, and there's a lot of benefits to that, because sometimes with the Scrum Agile, if you do run into a roadblock or a blocker, you can kind of turn around and get maybe finding a better solution or something with the people around you. But at the same time, I think the world more and more is moving towards these, as everything's kind of happening, especially with these type of jobs where everything's online, everything's visual, you can really see what's being done. So
cool. And then just another question. So in terms of like UX design, you mentioned you like the front end, so from the framing aspect, but what about from a like UX design perspective? How would you rank yourself in that?
Okay. And over the projects, there's been a lot of different times where either that's been handed off by like a graphics department or a department that kind of already has created all that, or there's been projects where they kind of let you run with it and don't really know. Now, more on the corporate level, usually they've handed off designs and stuff. So I would say I have a pretty well understanding of what popular design and UX and stuff is happening right now. Even with the different responsiveness, like how it should look on mobile, how it should, text should be bigger, things should align different, images should be smaller file sizes, things like that. So I do have a pretty good understanding just from working in so much front-end development of kind of what modern design and UX should be for popular modern applications or websites.
Cool. Thank you.
So Steve, I know you answered this question to Lisa, but I just wanted to just reiterate, touch a little more on that. The back-end development to support the capabilities that UI, to what extent you will be comfortable if you're asked to step in and take perform the task too. I understand there is a lot to do with the front-end technologies and a lot to perform, but if you need to take a step further and also integrate to the back-end, what's your comfort level? Have you taken the task in the past, or you're okay to explore?
Yeah, so fortunately with a platform like Magento, I believe it's powered by PHP, I'm pretty sure, which I'm actually, of any backend languages, PHP is kind of my most familiar. just because over the course of development, I've had to go back there. And then also with databases, I'm very actually pretty comfortable using like MySQL. As far as like the MongoDB or the Mango, and Java and things like, I mean, that's a whole crazy, I haven't got that far into the back end, like full stack, but as far as for most of these CMS platforms and things like that, I do have a fairly well understanding of back end development when it comes to the PHP and the MySQL databases. And honestly, in most of the positions I've worked where there has been like an application backend, it's almost been a separate team in itself anyways. So I haven't really had to have that responsibility of doing application type backend. And I know, some languages like Java are incredibly, incredibly difficult. And they're just older languages, so they, take a special skill set. So I do have familiarity with a lot of the CMS backends like PHP and MySQL and stuff, but some of the real technical like Java backends and stuff that's a little outside of my skill set.
Sure. Okay. So on those lines, coming back to the front-end technologies, what's your viewpoint on source control?
Well, I mean that seems to usually in my experiences I've used GitHub, Bitbucket, all these different repositories and such to make sure that things are done correctly. So I guess I do know Git, and then familiarity with GitHub and Bitbucket with project repos and things like that, and building the projects.
Have you ever used Azure DevOps?
Azure
DevOps with the pipeline, and it links into GitHub, but it's a Microsoft. Since they acquired GitHub, just curious if you'd ever used it before.
I have not. I'm familiar with Azure, but I have not used the DevOps services with Microsoft.
That's okay. We're just starting to dip toes in it as well.
Okay.
So, did you speak to Mr. Joe Ackerman yet? You did, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I think, like I stated earlier, we're kind of just getting into this, right? And Ron's kind of asked you some questions about being able to also provide some guidance, right? Like, hey guys, maybe we should try this, maybe not this. And it sounds like you'd be comfortable in providing recommendations and guidance. Would you also be comfortable if a project came your way to say, okay, that's cool, but we need this for the dev team and we need this, right? Like you were saying, like I need a back end to partner with me. I need, to kind of structure together. Sounds like you've got that kind of a bigger universal picture. And you wouldn't be hesitant or reluctant or unable to participate in discussions like that. Am I correct in saying that?
Very correct. Actually, I mean, I'm not one to necessarily tell what should be done, but at least to give some recommendations as far as where I think, because I do really stay on top of kind of where things are with this industry, but also kind of where they're going. And one of maybe the benefits of working contract roles, as much as contract roles, it's just a set period of time. Usually the hourly is pretty good, but you have to take into consideration the learning, the company, the people, the code, all these things that come with starting a new project so a lot of times when I've gone in, that a lot of that's been handed, but also I've had the opportunity to kind of, hey, recommend where should we go with this. One example I can think of is if you look at the Rosedale Mall app, that was actually built on Vue.js about 2 years ago, and at that point Vue.js was only, a year, 2 or 3 at the max old. So everybody kind of at the contract role was new to this technology. And that's kind of why we came to the conclusion that we should be, hey, why don't we go with this? We're hearing really good things about it out there on the internet. It seems to have a good documentation and a good community and things like that. So Yes, I've been in that position before, and I actually do like to, give my 2 cents of what I think things are going or where they're, but at the same time, I can be handed off whatever is kind of going already and maybe just give some recommendations how to improve that or things like that. But yes, I would be able to at least give input as far as where I think, um, things are going with it and what the company should use with the technologies.
So with that, kind of jumping off of that, why this position? Why Jack Links? Why now?
Okay. Okay. Well, I've been familiar with your product forever. I do know the company since several years. I've been consuming it. I also have seen your guys' office downtown. I've walked by the old Block E building. I forget what Mayo building now. So I have seen your company down there, and I'm familiar with it. It looks like a fun company. To be honest, a recruiter did kind of reach out to me because I just kind of been getting back out in the market to start putting out my application. But then when this kind of started to develop, it became more and more interesting. I started doing more and more research about like the application or the website and things like that. So it just seems like a really good company. It's a successful company. It's a growing company. It's a very Midwest kind of company. So I just thought it was a good fit to at least start pursuing this process.
Cool. Thank you.
So local to Minneapolis, Steve, or
Am I local to me? Yeah, I've been in Minneapolis my whole life, so
okay, okay.
well, more or less. I was born here, went to school here, graduated college here. So yes.
You just seem to work with a recruiter that provides jobs in two great spots, Minneapolis and Florida.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, what happened was after college, my girlfriend got into a law school down there, so I went down to work while she did law school, and then we ended up coming back with, nieces, nephews, parents getting older, brothers, sisters, all those things.
Okay. All right. So I think I don't have any further questions, Lisa. Anything from you?
Yeah, no, I guess just in terms of like your style of working, like if you could classify how you work, this past year has been kind of, unusual. And I think IT probably was able to slide into it a little easier than other teams maybe. And I agree with you. It's nice to have the face-to-face, but sometimes it's just nice to have downtime, right? Just to do what you need to do. In terms of your work style, with how you collaborate, how you communicate, and then just in terms of like how you respond to pressure, we are in a very strategic growth mode right now in terms of a company. So it's, I've worked both sides of the fence, the other side where it's like the fruit is drying up on the vine, right? And this side, and I prefer this side, but I also have a work style that I think works with that, right? There can be a lot of balls in the air at any given time. There can be new balls vaulted in where you have to set down what it is you were working on and pick up this other one, right? How would you describe your work style with that? Would you say you're adaptable? Would you say you're someone that needs to finish what they start? Can you start and stop? Can you go broad versus deep, right? I think that's another thing that we can sometimes, people in IT can internalize and struggle with. How would you classify you and your style?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'd say very flexible. I mean, the thing about not the problem, but the thing about this industry is that there's times where things are very chaotic and nothing's going right, and you don't know how to get to the next stage of the project, and you're just like in a stuck type of mode. And then there's times where things are just going smooth and you're not having any issues. And so I think, I have to adapt all the time given the situation and the difficulty and the task that's kind of being at hand. You know, sometimes there's mindless stuff like, oh, we're just copying over text, and you know, we're just bringing images, loading them all up, or renaming stuff, or you know, there's a lot of mindless activities. But then there's a lot of activities like if you get into actual like custom modules or plugins, or you know, some of these more complex type things where you really have to be more analytical and more like really into how do I get from this stage to this stage to this stage to get everything kind of making sure everything's working. So I would say very flexible, and that's just kind of given the role itself and the job requirements itself. Is that sometimes things are really hard and not only really hard, but really like just busy. You know, you can't go to you just completely swarmed with things to do, and then sometimes you have a little bit of downtime and things are slower. So in my experience, I would just say, you know, you have to be flexible because there are going to be stressful times. There are going to be times where deadlines are getting close or not met, but I think also a lot of ways to fix that is good communication with good, you know, project management and good, you know, Scrum Agile type meetings and project software like Jira and stuff. You can really help minimize those times where things become overwhelming or stressful or you're not meeting deadlines. So yes, I would guess to answer that in short, it would just be flexible.
Cool. Ross, do you have anything else, or do you have anything else? Do you have any questions for us, Steve?
I mean, at this time, I'm not, you know, I've talked with several people now, and I believe I still have another meeting. I'm not sure if this is because you were both on now, if it's just combined, or if I actually have another one after.
Let's see. What do you see there, Rob?
The next one is at 11:30, so right after this with Dan.
Okay.
Yeah. And then maybe you're confusing with another Ram. So you have another Ram too that you will meet with, who is the VP of the I.T. organization.
There we go. That's why I was a little confused. So yeah.
So it's that is still scheduled.
There's another Ram app, not to make it more confusing. We have two of them in IT.
Yeah, that's what threw me off there, but that makes sense. So I mean, at this stage, I'm sure everybody's, as you guys are as well, it seems obviously where everybody's working remote currently, and that seems to be the outlook for the near future, or
till June.
Till June.
Yeah, okay. And then they'll reassess.
Okay. I was just curious. And has that been working good for the company?
Sure.
We had a fabulous year. And I mean, my team, you know, I think in the beginning it was, you know, everyone kind of was like, I personally was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, it's horrible. And then, you know, you just kind of adapt and flex, and now I feel like we're kind of firing on all cylinders, right? Like, you use, you know, you live in Teams, you're living in chat, your video, you know what I mean?
Right.
You do it, right? So I think, you know, I had the role, this morning we had a stand-up, Ram is actually playing the role of a product owner on another initiative, and I'm playing the role of a Scrum Master, and I mean, it's just boom, right? We just go, and you just learn to type and take notes really fast and go, right? So I think it's the energy you put into it too, right? And the attitude you have for it. So I think I liked your answer about being flexible, because I think that's needed. I also liked your answer about, you know, raising your hand, right? Because there could be roadblocks, and especially now that we're virtual, it's really easy if you have a roadblock to just be like,
right?
But you gotta keep putting it out there, right? So important. Yep. Well, I think you're up next with Diane.
I'm gonna go to the next. Thank you guys.
Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. Thank you guys very much for your time.
All the best.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
There you are.
Hey, sorry, I was on with the other interview and they got them back to back to back, so I had to get out and get back in and just took
Oh,
them
no
on.
problem at all. Well, happy Friday. How's it going for you today with your interviews?
Good. Well, I guess the last one went pretty good, but we'll see.
Well, there's some confidence for you.
Right.
Well, my name's Diane Mayer. I'm the Senior Human Resources Manager, and IT is one of the areas that I support. So obviously you're interested in this role and talking with you as a potential team member for JackLinks. So just want to get to know you a little bit better and talk a little bit about us and JackLinks and all of that. And does that sound good to you?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So my first question for you is, why are you interested in joining JackLinks?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, to be honest, recruiter actually got me on this path, I guess. So a recruiter reached out. I've been in this industry for a while, and I've worked several contract roles over the course of my career. So being in a lot of contract roles, sometimes they reach out to me, and then I guess I kind of got the process started, and now I've got to this stage. But really, I guess the long story is kind of when the whole global situation happened, more or less a year ago, that was my last like full in-house, full-time type role. Since then, I've been working contracts, so I'm just kind of getting back out there, kind of putting on my application, just looking for more long-term full-time roles as opposed to contracts. And it's really just kind of how it's developed to getting here. So that's kind of the short of why. But I also am very familiar with the company. I'm familiar with the product. I've been eating it most of my life. I know the building downtown. I've seen you guys there, so I am familiar with the company. It's a good Midwest company. It seems to be growing well, so a lot of different reasons.
Okay. All right. Well, my first question for you is taking a look at, can you tell me a little bit about your background as it relates to your open position?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've basically been doing web application development for 12 years since I graduated from the University of Minnesota. So it's been a little while now. I'm almost getting to the point where I'm kind of considering myself that senior level developer because I have been doing this for so long. Over the course of the years, I've worked for different web firms where you kind of get handed all sorts of different things. Like a company could come and say, hey, we need to swap out some images. Hey, we need to add a page. Hey, we need to send our contact form to our emails that's not working. So I just think in my experience working at a web firm, I've been handed a lot of different things in this industry. So I've seen a lot, but then also having done a lot of contract roles, I've also been handed a lot of situations where you kind of got to get in there, learn the company, learn the people, learn the business, learn the code, all within, a couple months, and then the project's done. So in my experiences, I think I do have the experience, I should say, to kind of fill a role like this. I'm familiar with the technologies they're using, like Magento for JackLinks and things. So that's kind of why I guess I've pursued it to this point.
Okay. All right. And then what's your favorite part about what you do about your job? What do you like about developing?
I like being a part of kind of technology. I've always been into technology since I was a kid, building my own computers at the U.S.A, helping students with their IT problems and, just printers, hardware, things like that. But also I really like the future of the whole, like I don't just do this for work, which obviously I do it for work, but I also do it for like passion and hobby because I'm always interested in where things are now, where things are going. I mean, when I started this, there weren't even, iPhones and 10 years ago, and now iPhones and tablets and thing are the leading display of most websites and the internet in general. So I really am interested where things are. I think we've kind of hit a peak where things are stagnant for the time, but it's not going to be but a few more years. And I do see newer things like It's already kind of happening with some like phone games, like augmented reality and even virtual reality and all these kind of things where I do think like the internet could potentially be going. But at the same time, I like doing this career because I'm interested in technology. I always have been, and I don't see that changing. So, as much as it's work, it's also passion.
Okay. Well, now I have a really hard question for you. Are you ready?
Okay.
What is your favorite Jack Link's product?
Well, I don't know if I would know them all by their actual brand names, but the beef jerky itself, I mean I guess just the peppered beef jerky, teriyaki, the beef sticks sometimes. I haven't done a lot with the beef sticks and cheese, but I do know they're out there, so I think too, just the fact that the product can be kind of stored and carried, and I'm sure that actually probably helped a company like you guys over the last year when this whole situation, you have a product people can put in their cupboards or whatever, and it'll be good for years to come. I would assume years, but yeah. So I guess I like them all. I'm not picky on any one or the other, but. Yeah, I grew up with this. Even as a kid, we were eating a lot of this. Being just from the Midwest, there's a lot of jerky and things up here.
Okay. Yeah, I've been here for about 4.5 years, and I was a big Red Label Jack Link's teriyaki fan. So when I first was looking around to switch positions, I'm like, I love the product. So that's why I checked out the company, and I came from a 40,000 global-based company to down to 4,000, and I did that intentionally to get kind of that small town instead of just a number. But 40,000 people, you really didn't know a whole lot of people here. You know Bob and Susie and everybody that comes through. So it's really, I'm sure you know the story of Jack Link. So Jack selling jerky out of his truck. It's kind of a cool story when you think about how you first start with the company, and we've just had phenomenal growth over and over and over. And as you said with COVID, we knocked it out of the park for sales within that just because of the situation. So something good came out of COVID. So very, very good sales within that. And it's just a very different atmosphere. It's very cool. Jack Link's it's casual, so we're in jeans. I put my suits away 4.5 years ago. They're gathering dust in my closet, which is nice. So it's a nice, relaxed atmosphere. Our building, as you talked about, excuse me, is Troy wanted a big wow factor downtown, and it is a wow factor. It's on either side of the Skyway. Glass walls, we've got ergonomic desks, everything's just reds and yellows and brights and vibrant, and so you have all of those different things coming through to have a really fun atmosphere and collaboration spaces. And we have about 210 team members at our support center. We support the front lines of both sales and people making our products. So that's what we do with all the different people that are located within those sites. We also do have a fully functional U.S.A. certified plant. I didn't know if you knew that or not, right on site on the first floor. And so we can make anything that any of our plants make. So we can do runs out of there, sales samples. We can do, if we're trying to modify something, we can make it in little small batches versus Alpino, which is a very large batch of jerky when you're doing that. So we also do some fun things where for a team member event, I called out and said, hey, what can you make for me? So they made me smoked brisket. So we had that for a team member lunch. So that was pretty cool to take a look at something fun to do and really utilizing the spaces that we have. So very cool atmosphere that way. Yeah, a couple of our values.
I was gonna say I've actually seen your office downtown in the old Block E building or the Mayo building, so I am actually familiar. I've walked by it and it looks like a really fun kind of office type environment.
It is, it's all open and it's very new and fresh and bright. And we have a Starbucks bean machine to get fresh ground coffee or fresh brewed coffee. I'm a huge caffeine fan.
Yeah, me
too. So I got it right here, so it's nice. You got yours there too? Yeah. And so it's a nice way in the morning, you get that nice smell going on. We've got snacks for people. So we want to make sure that we have a really enjoyable experience for people. I mean, spend a lot of time at work, so we want to make sure that it's a good environment for people that way.
Okay,
well,
great.
Cool. A couple more questions for you. You've got rum at noon, right?
Yeah, I got back. This is 2 of 3, so I think I have 3. And this is my fourth of 5 total. So.
Well, the reason why we do that is a couple different reasons. One, we're all remote, so we want to make sure you get, the idea. We can't show you the place, we can't show you the vibe.
Right.
So we kind of like to talk about it, and then you get different perspectives when you talk to different people. So, kind of things that the questions that I ask and, the answers I give are going to be a little bit different probably than Rom's or Lisa's, or I'm not sure who else you guys, probably Joe. You've interviewed obviously with Joe. And so, it's nice to get different perspectives because we're interviewing you for the position, but you're also interviewing us. So we want to make sure that you get kind of different cross sections of people and kind of get some different vibes. You can figure out what is Jacqueline's and is this somewhere I want to work. So kind of give you different perspectives. So I know when I interviewed, I think I had 2 full days of interviews. I'm like, is there anybody else you want me to talk to? Because I can't think of anybody else I haven't talked to. So that's why we do it. So we want to just make sure on that. Well, good. All right. So can you describe a time for me? Give me an example when you had to change your communication style to make sure your message was understood. So, you're talking, we'll call it techie, and you're talking to someone that is like, what is a computer? So kind of can you give me an example of where you had to give a communication message that way?
Yeah, surprisingly, that happens quite a bit. And it's not that people like maybe don't understand. They just need an explanation as far as kind of how the big picture is to make it come together. A lot of times working with a web firm, working with these small businesses, they have somebody in there who wants to have some control of the system or some way to update text or some way to change pictures or prices or whatever they have. So there's been a lot of times, and even sometimes I go to just creating like a little 2-minute video where it's almost easier than trying to explain, but just recording a video on my screen and explaining that way. But yes, working for a web firm in the last several years, or for several years, I've come across that a lot where small businesses, even larger businesses, will have somebody who they want to explain something or have somebody in-house kind of having some control. So a lot of times, yes, I've been in that position where I've had to kind of walk people through the system, what they exactly need to do, maybe creating a quick little tutorial video or a quick little, email or something that kind of walks people through that. So I would say I can't think of like one specific, or I can, but in a bigger picture, it's just been kind of working at a web firm where you have a lot of people for all different businesses that kind of want an answer to different problems that they might be encountering and just helping them walk through that process.
Okay. And then, can you tell me about a time when you were asked to do something that you had never done before? Can you tell me what that situation was? How did you figure out and how successful were you?
Yeah, so that's another thing. In this industry, you kind of find that often where you come across, whether it's a new technology or a new platform or a new that you haven't used before, or you're not familiar with, or in some cases you've never even heard of. So I do think that ultimately comes across a lot. It's being able to obviously adapt and kind of take things to the basics. All right, where is there any documentation out there that I can find to kind of read up and get a better idea? Is there anybody on the team that maybe knows more about this that I can then, bounce off their brain or their head? Or do you just kind of get in there, get your hands dirty and start playing with things? Because at the end of the day, a lot of these technologies are still built on the same, HTML and CSS and all these languages at their core. So it happens a lot, and really depending on the size of the fix or the problem or the new technology that you're presented with, you really just have to kind of get in there and get familiar. And as long as you have the foundational skills, it's usually pretty easy to adapt to a newer technology these days. More and more these days. I think it's getting we're getting a little more streamlined. We're back in the day, 10 years ago, you'd have all these new things coming out and everything was, it'd be here for a month and then gone the next. Now they're finding like e-commerce with Magento and WordPress for small business and applications with React or Vue seem popular. So they're becoming more of like a standard, which I think the industry needed, because for so long it was just you know, you try to find somebody who could do all these things, and it was like, wait, I mean, that's just not possible. And even like the last call I was on, I think Ron, he does a lot of the back end and the databases. So that's, that's kind of his little niche, whereas somebody's obviously doing the front end and the UI UX. So I having those resources has always helped.
Okay. And then, Katie, tell me about a time when you had to move fast, but you wished you had more time to guarantee more accuracy.
So that's another thing in this industry. I find a lot of times, project deadlines, expectations just aren't met. And there's a lot of different ways to try and prevent that. I think the biggest one is communication, because once the communication stops and people start, you could spend a day or two doing something that's not even needed or not going to be used or doesn't work. And a lot of that is having good communication, making sure you know the direction that things need to go to get the project done in time. Because often, these project deadlines, they set them 3 months before, and then as you get into the project, we want to add this feature, we want to add this, we want to create a user login for them, or just something that, from a technology standpoint, you have to be like, okay, but that's going to take another week, like feasibly, like you can't just add that functionality and not account for it this far into the project. But at the same time, I think that there's ways to also avoid that. And that's like, all right, how do we get what we promised we'd get by this deadline completed? Because that's what's important. Now, we don't need to worry about all this other stuff. If we want to take this stuff, let's keep these ideas and let's implement them at, a stage 2 or something like that. But we have to just kind of stay on this task to get this functionally available to the public. And then we can go back and kind of look at, okay, let's add this feature, let's add, whatever else kind of came up along the way, because it's almost inevitable that as you get into these things, people come up with new things and they want different ideas, but they don't take into account that we didn't plan for all these new ideas and new features. But I think good communication, and whether that's Scrum Agile meetings or project management software like Jira and things like that, you can really streamline these days, especially as more and more people are remote and all at home, and you don't have that same morning Scrum meeting where everyone comes together to kind of make sure everything's moving. You do, but now it's all digitally and everybody, can't look at the same things. And but I guess in my experiences, it happens, but there's ways to prevent it if you kind of stay focused on the original project.
Okay. And then can you tell me about a manager that you worked with that was your favorite manager? What type of attributes did you like about that individual?
Well, I've been pretty lucky. I've had a lot of managers that I've actually liked. I can't really think of too many I haven't liked, to be honest. Yeah. But as far as the question, I mean, I guess I like managers that are obviously engaged in the project and kind of know what's going on with the technologies and the end results and the goals, but also understand what it takes to get there. Sometimes there's been issues with management that maybe they don't know as much of the actual what's going on as they do just kind of managing people, not as much of actually managing the technology and where things are. So I guess if I have had problems in the past, it's more of a lack of management really understanding the role that we fill. And that's how I go back to like, we want to add this feature, this plugin. And, a good manager in my experience, they understand that, we can do that, but that's going to take another week of building, testing, all these things that come into play that don't get accounted for. And maybe a bad manager in my experience is just like, no, we need that, get that done, without taking into account the actual job that we have as the developers to get that process done, because none of this really happens overnight, but a lot of people like to think that it does or wish that it does. because a lot of times they want it done yesterday, and they're moving already behind. So good management, I think, is management that's engaged with the product and knows the technologies and understands what it takes to get the product done.
Excellent. All right. Well, do you have any questions for me at all? I know you've had lots of questions from everybody else, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Technology-wise, I'm not going to answer any technical ones. That one you're going to have to talk to Ron and all of that.
So you're the HR, correct?
I am. I'm the senior HR manager. So I work with the team regarding, when we initiate different programs, like we have an Optum HR coming out right now that we're working on. We just finished our SMART goals. We're working on taking a look at the next month's competencies and working with our teams on what competencies do we have, and all of those different types of things. And we're working on career pathing. We have a huge 3-year plan of all the things we're doing within HR. So it's a really cool time.
Very cool.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah. And how has that been being remote when it all kind of came at once, or were you guys prepared? Has it been a good, are things kind of streamlined now?
Well, we've been remote for a year, which is really weird to say. So, the first week was a little clunky, I think, but after the first week, I mean, obviously we have technology. We use Teams all the time and connect with us. We have a face-to-face. And, from my perspective, I miss the drive-bys. I call them drive-by conversations. I had to walk around and say, hey, how's it going? So I missed that because now I have to call people and go, hey, how's it going? So, once we get through that, but having a lot of meetings and having our managers, I work with them a lot. Okay, you have team meetings. IT did a great job. You got stand-up meetings. They met every day, when we first started going remote. And I think people have done quite well with making sure that we're connecting with people. So the biggest challenge is turn your camera on, so that's the biggie is when we're talking to people, so we get that face-to-face so we can get that interaction. But no, it's done very well. So
I know.
Jefflinks is a very resilient company. We adapt pretty quickly, so.
Yeah, just going from a lot of just in-person meetings to a lot of Zoom meetings or, WebEx meetings. It's changed very quick. The nice thing, HR would probably be a harder role to do, remotely. Like you said, you want to come by and see how people are and say hi.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the technology element is that, I've worked other remote jobs kind of before the whole pandemic hit. So it's a little more familiar, and those things like the Scrum Agile meetings, and they've been doing that for several years now. So this was kind of prepared for a little bit more in technology, but I could see how a lot of positions like HR and management and things like that would be a lot harder to, I think, manage these days. But I'm sure we'll get back soon, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully soon. Well, excellent. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you. I know Jim will be checking in with you to see how things are going with your interviews, but I want to make sure you get enough time so you can pop on with Rom.
Perfect.
And get all connected before you have that call.
All right. Well, thank you, Diane.
All right. It's great meeting you.
Take
Have a
care.
great day.
You too. Oh. Hey.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm good. Good. How are you today?
Good. I can bet your head is coming out.
Let me see here. Sorry, it's
Bit more down.
third meeting here, back to back.
Oh, you are. I know. Yeah. So how is it going so far?
Good, good. I mean, I had one at 11, one at 11:30. Now I have you at 12, and I actually had 2 meetings on Wednesdays. So this is actually my 5th interview for Jack Links.
Yeah. So you could say that we do a lot of interviews and we met a lot.
Met a lot of people so far.
Right. So how is it going so far?
Good. I think everybody's been really nice. Company seems really nice. I would imagine things are going pretty good.
I mean, definitely for our organization, Steve, it's going really well. Right? So we are growing really good. We're getting good growth rates, and there are a lot of things happening. We're in a really exciting phase of our organization. A lot of investments happening both in IT and non-IT, right? So it's great to be part of it at this point in our journey. So
That's what I've heard. I've heard things have been very good this last year, even given the whole global situation and stuff. It seems like the company's been doing very well.
Right. It's definitely great in that context. So I know you've been talking to a lot of people. I know you probably heard about what the role is, what we're looking after it. So maybe let's start with that, simply introducing yourself, and based on what you heard about the role, how do you think you fit into that, and what can you bring to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just to be quick, my history, graduated from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. I've basically been doing web development, more recently application development, for almost 12 years now. So quite a while. It's crazy how it's happened so quick, but I've seen a lot of things. Like when I started, it was even just, basic HTML and files and things like that. Then the whole CMS platforms, got real familiar with the WordPress and the Joomlas and even the Magentos and things, although they've all evolved a lot over the years. And then the last couple of years, even more cross-platform, like application development using the JavaScript frameworks, mostly like React and Vue. So that's kind of been my history. Even before that, like as a kid building computers at the U.S.A, I was helping students, just hardware issues, printer issues, Microsoft Word issues. So I've kind of been doing this more or less my whole life. And then up until recently, I've been doing a lot of contract roles. So it's it's really good hourly pay, but you kind of get into a company, you have to learn the business, the people, the code, all the things that kind of go with it. But then you're only there for, 5-6 months at a time, and then you kind of move on to the next contract role. So it's been good in that it has really good like hourly wages and stuff, and you kind of get to be experienced with new technologies and new projects and stuff. But at the same time, it's kind of not good because you're always kind of looking for the next contract role after that one's over, which isn't hard to find, but at the same time, it is a process.
Yeah, the market, based on the current market, may not be that bad. But let me understand, why is that so short though? Is it because you're going there and building a website and leaving, or is it, you said you started with websites and now you're building application side of it. I want to know a little bit more on the application side. What did you do? What do you see as your biggest successful project in the last 3 years? And let me understand a little bit more on that. What that project is about, how the end users are using it, what's the real benefit for the business and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably some of my most notable like application type development projects have been with Optum, which is a big technology branch of United Healthcare. It's down in Eden Prairie. Did a pretty big contract there with the React framework, but the whole the whole project itself was all being done for an internal application within the company. So it's not like a live, website or web application. It was an internal project. We basically launched that project, and that whole contract was kind of over. But that project was a React project. It was a team of 3 or 4. We had some people in New York, some in California, some here in the Twin Cities. So a very, Scrum Agile type setup.
People you said?
I'm sorry?
2 or 3? No, I thought you said a number of 2 or 3 people of developers, and then you're saying a lot of places. So how many people you said? Maybe.
Yeah, okay, so in the Eden Prairie office, there was like 3 or 4 of us. There was 2 front end. There was a guy who was doing the back end and the database, MongoDB, Java. So, very complicated application back end. And then we were doing the React front end. And then with another project that was a little more recent was Rosedale Mall in the Mall of America. If you actually go into the malls, you can see like they'll walk you through the mall and things like that. That was all done on application development. That was done using Vue.js, which at the time, this was 2-3 years ago, Vue.js was only, a year or 2 old. So really the whole team kind of came in and was learning that process and that, but we wanted to use the newest framework, and we all kind of were able to put a little bit of input into that. So those ones are actually visible online. I think it's myrosedalemall.com or something like that. But pulling different APIs, just another application project.
Okay. So I think as Optimum one, the React, what is that supposed to do for the end users, right? Whoever is using that application, what is it about? The React application.
It was kind of odd because there was really no practical reason to use the React framework. They just did it as an organization, but it was basically just an internal application. It took some health data of different people. So it was, data like height, weight, blood type, all these different things that medical systems need. It also took their name, age. But again, it was just an internal application that the Optum United Healthcare was using on their customer. I don't know if customer is the right word, but their users.
Data, whatever that is, okay?
Yep.
Yeah, members data, patient data, whatever insurance members. Okay, they are using that data to do what? They are just collecting, and what is this application about? What is the core of this? I'm not talking about the technology aspect of it, Steve. I'm trying to understand the business side of it. What this application does for them. Yeah,
basically it just carried their data from one part of the organization to the other part of the organization.
Why do you need a web application for carrying the data?
It was almost, I don't know. They were working on a lot of different projects they were even building their own custom like CSS type framework. It was just a huge organization, a lot of people working on a lot of different projects. But yes, that was basically so that one department of the United Healthcare could share the data with the other department. And I'm not even sure which the different departments were, but that was the purpose of the application.
Okay, interesting. But why do you need a CMS tool for that application?
A CMS?
Yeah, why do you need a content management if it is an internal application? What is that about?
Well, we really didn't need a CMS with that project because everything was done through the application.
Okay. I was going through your resume. You were saying that, hey, this is completely using the Adobe and React framework, JS framework. That's what you're talking about. Okay. So what type of experience you have on the mobile front, mobile application side?
Right. Well, I think nowadays everything has become even more and more mobile focused. When I got into this, they didn't even have iPhones and Androids and things like that. So, clearly I've been working a lot with mobile. I think it's gotten a little bit easier with a lot of these CMS platforms like WordPress and things already having responsive development integrated into their frameworks and into their CSS files and such. So I do think that, I know the UI, I know how things should look, how things should be laid out. I've been on projects where that stuff has been presented for me and been handed to me from almost like a graphics department. And then there's been projects where I've had to kind of run with a lot of that myself and haven't been provided that information. So I'm very familiar with mobile. I know, the basic foundations of where mobile's at and also kind of where it's going. Things like making the text bigger, making files, images smaller, speed, performance, all the things that hamburger menus, all the different type of things that mobile responsive sites are becoming standard with. I've been working almost primarily now. I focus forehand on mobile, second on desktop.
You're primarily focusing on mobile, but what type of frameworks and what's the difference? What is the development platforms? And if you have to explain it to me like a layman, right? So what is the difference between a mobile development and a web development?
Okay.
Mobile app development.
A mobile app development?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's really the technology behind it. One is going to be an app, so obviously you can get the app from the app store and stuff. And one is going to be just a website, so you can just access the website on the browser. However, I feel like app development has obviously become more in tune with cross-platform progressive web apps, PWAs, where you have something like, again, React or Vue or Angular powering these systems so that you can use both iOS and Android. Or if you really have the resources and the people and the skills, you could have almost like a native application developed in like a Swift or a Java for Android. But I think more and more things are going again to this progressive web apps where you're seeing more and more, at least big corporate level stuff using the React framework. And then I could see even more and more people going into the Vue framework just because it's not owned by a Google or a Facebook. It's a more of an open source community. It's kind of taken the best of both worlds and move forward with those. Now, as far as mobile with something like Magento and things like that, a lot of these systems are built with responsive in place. So just by kind of getting that theme or whatever is powering the back end or the front end of the aesthetics UI UX is already built for these different resolution sizes and these different browser resolutions.
Okay. So, Steve, I'm sure people might have mentioned it to you. We don't have a web development team here or a mobile development team, right? This is the first time we're recruiting somebody.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Okay. This is the only person coming in and owning the whole team and actually making us move forward in that direction, right? So we have SAP, which is being primarily worked with the backend system side of it. And we do a little bit of development in the SharePoint, right? Things like that we use in SharePoint and things like that, but we don't have and we are betting a lot in what we're calling the power platforms like Microsoft Power Apps and things like that with the no code, like people can go and do their own app developments in it. But we do have, I don't know if some people mentioned you, what we call working with a SaaS Scratch app, which is out there, which is developed by a third-party development team, right? So a company. And we do have, like Magento, you've been talking about our e-commerce sites are built on the Magento platform, which is also done by a third-party company, right? So the goal of this role is about bringing as much as possible in-house and be that the champion for our organization to advance us in this web and mobile development side of it, right? So part of being a champion is all about just knowing the technology side of it, right? So how and where I can drive the business value aspect of it. So far, the experiences you're talking about, it looks like you have a good understanding of what the technical platforms can do and how you can use them to build something aspect of it. But give me a solid place where you actually saw a business problem or a business situation and you drove a technology solution with the skills you built.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would say actually most of the organizations I've been in have actually helped build like a more, if not automated, more streamlined, more easy to use, more easy to communicate with their customers, their user base. Um, what I can go back to too is just up at Hennepin Technical College up in Brooklyn Park. I did a redevelopment for them, and a lot of it was to help the school itself streamline the communications with the students, different ways to get to their email portal, different ways to get to their class schedules, different ways to pull the information that they need from the school. So that's just one example of where I went in, was presented with, okay, how can we get this website to the next level? And then was presented with these tasks like, well, we need this to be incorporated to try to help automate the school so that they didn't have to do so much of this hands-on of pointing people in the right direction and things like that, to try to get their information for classes, to try to get their information if they're interested in submitting potentially going to the school and things like that. So that's, I mean, one part where I've had to take the problems that the school is presented with and then find a technology or find a solution through the technology that could help them better automate, save time, save costs, save people labor, save customer service things, all these parts that you can use the website to help knock off a lot of these issues that they were experiencing. So, I mean, that's one project. Another one I can think of is even like the Rosedale Mall and how people can get there and they want to get around the mall in different areas and things. Well, this is going to walk them through those steps to get there. I mean, it's literally that integrated, and that was pulling a lot of different APIs and things that were provided. But that's another solution where we were building the technology to help the end user and the business itself kind of streamline and make things easier and more automated.
Are you familiar with any design thinking concepts? And if so, what it is, what does it mean to you?
Design concepts?
Design thinking concepts.
Like,
did you ever hear about this concept called design thinking?
Design thinking.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I mean, I might have an understanding as far as like how the UI and stuff of the application.
Yeah, how do you put the end user in the forefront? You design and you come up with the right wireframe. Put yourself as a developer in the end user mindset to do what is right for that. The user of the web application and the whatever that application is.
Yeah, so I think I have a pretty good understanding of how things are in 2021. I mean, I'm not. It's not my direct skill. I'm more of a creating the designs that have either been provided or running with an idea that somebody's already presented. But I do have a fairly good foundation of how things should be laid out, how headers should structure, how footers should lay out, how buttons should look, how, these foundational pieces of an application or a website should look to a user. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily my first skill set, but I've been presented with it a lot of times over the years, that whether the designs or the concepts have been handed to me and we had to kind of customize them from there, or whether it was already like a theme or a template that was imported and then we move things from there, I do have a good understanding, but it's not necessarily my first skill set.
Cool. So, what, other than the technical aspects of it, Steve, if I were to ask you, what is the number one soft skill you're bringing? Let's say people who know about Steve, what do they talk about? Hey, he's great at this. What is that about you?
What am I? Well, it's kind of funny. I would say, technology, because I literally kind of am always engaged with this stuff, and it's what interests me. And even when I'm not necessarily working, I'm kind of looking into things. But I'm very active also. Like, I spend a lot of time on computers, so I like to walk a lot. I like to bike a lot. Just things like that keep me kind of getting fresh air and fresh blood moving, because I do spend a lot of time sitting on computers. so I guess those are kind of my activities outside
I
of.
think I'm trying to get to, for example, some sort of organizational competencies like organization skills, leadership skills, or the curiosity, ability to influence, ability to integrate with people, and how do I work with the teams? What is it? That's what I'm after. So what are you good at? If you look at what are the different skill sets a typical professional needs to have, other than the not knowing a little bit more about the computers and technology.
Right. So I'm very well working with teams. I'm not necessarily somebody who's always set on like one set of ideas or one way to do things. I know that in this industry, things can be approached from a lot of different angles. So I wouldn't say that leadership's not my strong point. I would just say that I don't necessarily find myself in a lot of like leadership type roles. I'm more in a team type environment and working with a group of like-minded individuals. So I'm able to take in other ideas and concepts and kind of run with those. But I'm also able to kind of give my input and to give my thoughts on maybe what I think is the best solution for either the problem or the technology. But I'm definitely, I wouldn't say, I would say I'm not necessarily the leadership type role as much as like the team and presenting and working with, and I'm very good with that. I've done it several times, whether it's remote, whether it's in-house. I like working with the group.
Right.
I think I got that.
So, I think, yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Sorry.
And I flip the question and say, hey, what do the people talk about when they talk about Steve? Hey, I wish he gets better at this better, right? So I wish I want this more from him. In other words, what are your opportunities or your weakest things?
My weakest things, I guess I would say is, I mean, if I'm going from a technology standpoint, I'm pretty weak with the whole back end. I'm more of a front end type person. But if I'm going from more of a, just like a personal thing, I mean, there's a lot of times where I can kind of be, like aggressive to kind of get things pushing forward and moving, and I'm not one to like if we get into a blocker or a situation where I'm not able to move forward, is finding that information and resources to just keep pushing forward throughout the project. But if people had to say what's the good stuff about Steve, is I think he has a good understanding of technologies and where things are. What's the bad things about how Steve works is that sometimes he doesn't
All the way?
yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's a tough question. That's the hardest question in 5 interviews, and it's not even really technical one.
So let me pause here. I know I should have introduced myself in a better way. Obviously, you know my name, right, before you walked in, and I lead the IT function here. We are about 50 people IT team, and we have 6 or 7 people in Europe, right? So we actually look at a global IT team. Now we are actually bringing our New Zealand team into a little bit into the whole group. As I was saying earlier, we don't do a lot of web and mobile application development here. That is what we're trying to change a little bit, especially a couple of areas in marketing, HR, and all of those kind of things, and see where we can do and how we can do some of these things. And then my background is predominantly, I worked for Nestle for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Which is a huge company, right? So we have I was talking about 50, 60 people IT team here, and Nestle used to have a 5,000 people IT team, right?
Wow.
So that's a huge difference in the number of people wise. So obviously the same thing with Optum or United Healthcare is probably they might have maybe 10, 15,000 IT team, right?
Yep.
So that's not probably even bigger than Nestle's IT team. So my focus for a while is how do I ensure that we leverage the existing technologies we have and then some of these open source technologies and help develop the things we needed quickly rather than depending all the time on the packaged application, right? So that's why we are investing on this one. It's not just about websites for the outside folks or external facing for me. This is most of this is all about internal applications to use. We don't have a set ideas or set applications, but we are trying to get to business, give them an option saying, hey, we can develop a lot more things on the website. We don't need to wait for a big a package application. You need to buy something like SAP or Salesforce or something like Magento or something like that, right? So that's the idea behind it. So you have any questions for me?
So you're the VP of the IT department, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I lead the overall IT team. Yeah.
Okay, and you're also normally in the Minneapolis area or office?
Yeah, I'm in the Minneapolis office. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, matter of fact, I'm right now in the office. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it is open. So do you do a lot of on-hand stuff yourself, like with the Magento or with the?
Myself, no. I barely got into the. For example, I probably don't even know how to get into the Magento system.
Oh, really? So you have and most of that is being managed by a team overseas then?
Not overseas. I think it's here in the Minneapolis, but it's a third-party company.
It's a third-party company. So you guys will be cutting your contract with that company and then bringing your.
Not all on the day one. As we progress, we understand where do we need to bring and how do we do all of those kind of things, right? It's not that we're trying to cut the contract on day one and do it. So some of those things they might stay with the third party. Some of those things we might be. It's about new things we need to develop.
New things. So this team will come in and what is the project that this new team is it going to be mostly the website, mostly I think it's a Sasquatch app or I've heard about or?
We are going to put a lot more. That's one area where I would like to bring it in-house, meaning without our as I was saying, when I was saying in-house with a team, it's not like 1,000 people. It's only one person coming in and making it all. Obviously, you will get help. You need to help, right? So we don't do a lot on the web and mobile front, right? We do very minimal on that end. So that is what we're trying to bring it in. And then this, Sasquatch is something to start with, but we go on, we get these small business problems a lot of times and say, hey, I want to do something. So that's where I'm trying to understand also. You do a lot with the front end, but this is not just the front end aspect of it. This job is about you need to do the whole aspect of the development, right? So including the database, hey, whatever database I'm using it, where do I'm putting it, and how am I reading that, and how am I presenting it, how am I integrating with other applications out there with the same data, right? So all of those aspects of it, including the APIs and all of it, I don't think you have a lot more exposure on the API based on what I'm seeing on the resume, right?
I do, but not. Yes, I mean, there's obviously always more to be learned. I think when I was talking with the other Ram, the first meeting, he said he did a lot of back end. I'm not sure exactly how all that works.
Yeah, he does a lot of integration aspects of it with SAP and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not that I'm not familiar with the back end. It's just a lot of these roles that they've had almost a team that was specializing in the back end. And I do know the PHP from Magento and the MySQL databases. But when you get into some of these applications with Java and MongoDB and stuff, a lot of those, it's not that I haven't exposure to it. It's just there's always been a team kind of specializing in that part of the app. But I do know, yeah, sorry.
Fair enough. I'm not. That's what you got exposed to, and that's what you're asked to, and all those things. But as I was saying, we are one person team,
Right.
and how do we make sure that we have all those aspects of it? Yeah. Anything else you wanted to ask me?
I think at this stage, I mean, I've learned quite a bit about the company. I've met quite a few people. I have a pretty good understanding of where things are.
What is attraction to you at this point in your career? I mean, you've been doing this development for a while, as you said, 10, 12 years or more than that. I know at one point you did this full-time role for 4 or 5 years, and then later on you're doing these small contracting things, right? So what made the difference now? Why do you want to come back, and what is attracting to you about this role?
A great question. And really, I was actually up until the sparklers.us, which was an e-commerce, but it was just a Shopify project. I was working full time in house. And then when the whole global situation happened, they were doing weddings, big people events, big large groups. All of that kind of came to an end overnight. So we didn't really know what was going to happen. So then as time went on, that company kind of shut down temporarily until this whole situation's over. So only during really the last year have I been doing more like freelance contract type stuff. But I do want to, and this is why the recruiter and why I started putting my application back out there, is I am looking for something a little bit more long term, something a little more steady, something that, I can grow with the business and the application and continue to manage and maintain it. And, not just get in, build it, and it's done, but more of a project, which is becoming more and more common. I think more and more they need to maintain and update. And people are understanding that more, and that's where I'm kind of finding myself now, is just getting in with a company, looking at more of a long-term project, and then contracts.
And are you in Florida or are you in here?
No, I'm here in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So you used to shuttle between Minneapolis and Florida, or?
So yeah, after I graduated University of Minnesota, my girlfriend went to law school down there. So I went with her while she did law school. And then I just stayed for work and such. But then over the last few years, as I got nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, my parents are getting older. I've been up here in the Twin Cities, but obviously with the last year with COVID and stuff, it's been very, nobody's really in offices anyways. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I was down there for several years, but I am back here in the Twin Cities area. I've done most of my projects here in the Twin Cities area, so.
All right. Nice talking to you. Thanks for the time.
Awesome.
And obviously, Jim will let you know, right? So based on, I think it looks like you're talking to other folks next week too, right? On Monday?
Not that I've heard of, but possibly. This is my fifth.
Okay, this is the last one then.
Oh, maybe.
Okay, that's good. Okay, all
All
right.
right, Ram. Thank you very much for your time. Take care. Bye. Oh my gosh. What?